Hello again, everybody, and welcome to my newest ink drawing video, ink painting video, maybe, I suppose. This video, like all of the rest of my ink series of paintings, was already sketched in before I started recording. I do have in the future some drawings that I started before I had even started sketching. I started recording. So I'm going to try and include that in a few future videos, but the pencil is awfully hard to see on camera. I don't think I would have been able to see it at all from this angle, but I've started using a more from above angle, and I think I can get the pencil to show up a little bit. Well, we'll see. It'll be an experiment, but this painting is very appropriate for the weather I'm having right now, actually. It's all snowy and gray where I'm at right now. So this is a good painting to have. This is a stand of black oil sunflower seeds that I grow on my property every year. I grow a bunch of sunflower seeds. And then over the winter, I leave the sunflower stalks with their seed heads up. I don't cut them down. And I get big flocks of wild birds in the winter come and perch on my big sunflower plants and eat up all the seeds. It's pretty adorable. I really enjoy watching all the little wild birds on my sunflowers. But when I decided to draw this picture, because it was so monochrome, because it was a snowy image, there was a lot of lights and there was a lot of just a smaller amount of very dark darks. I really wanted to minimize the amount of colors I used. I wanted to try to use I only used 2 colors for this entire drawing, one of which was a black ink and the other of which was the blue ink, my Winsor & Newton inks. Just black and blue in varying concentrations is all I used for this drawing. And I found this was one of my first real snowy scenes. I've always found snow a little bit intimidating to paint because it's so white. And obviously you just can't leave your whole page white, because that won't look like snow. It'll just look like blank paper. So I found, as I went through this drawing, that the trick... Oh, here's my little bird. I'm putting on a first layer of dark from my little bird right there. He's very fluffy. He's a very fluffy little bird because it's cold out, so he's got all his feathers puffed up. Oh, but back to what I was saying. I suppose I went off on a bird-related tangent. I think the trick to snow is to start with really, really light layers. Like I always say to start with a light layer and then build up. And that's the easiest way to go about any painting like this, I think. But for snow in particular, you really need like the smallest amount of pigment you can manage to start out with. Because if you go in too dark, it's going to stop looking like snow. Snow is these tiny little crystalline shapes, so it ends up being a lot of really soft, subtle shadows because the light refracts off all of the individual flakes. You don't get a lot of hard line shadows in snow. So you start out with your really, really light color, and you go in and you just make little shadows with that pale color anywhere that your snow scene looks the absolute darkest. Anywhere that your snow scene is very dark, the darkest shadows you put in the very lightest of gray colors. And that's how you start out. And that's a good way to tell how to go forward from there, because then you start making your darkest areas a little darker. And as you look at your picture, you'll find lighter areas then. As you go in and make your darkest areas dark, you'll find mid-tones of shadow down to the brightest whites that snow gets to. It's very bright white. So yeah, just teeny tiny corrections. I'm not really sure how fun this particular video is to watch because it's such a lot of teeny tiny additions. Oh, but here's some nice dark color. Here, there were a couple places where I put dark color in relatively soon, and that was the seed heads of my sunflower seeds, because the snow weighed down the sunflower heads. And by the end of the season, when I took the photograph that this painting is based on, all of my sunflower stalks had been bowed down by the weight of the snow and the winter, and they were all pointing down toward the ground. So all of my seed heads were at the very bottom of these little clumps. You can see them now. They're just splotches, and I'm sure you can't see it yet because you don't know how it's going to look, like I do in my head. But all of these little splotches that you see are actually flower heads that are coated in snow then, and the seeds are pointing straight down, which is very convenient for the birds then, because then I suppose all the snow gathers on the bottom side of the flower head that they don't care about anyways, and leaves open that nice seed head for them to enjoy. Now here I am, I've started putting in the stalks, and the stalks are very dark, but as you can see, I still went in with a pretty dark color, or a pretty light color, a pretty light color to start with, even though I know basically where my stalks are gonna be. I started my snow shading with a mix of red, or a mix of the black and the blue paint, and I put in the stalks with just a dilution of the gray itself, the black that was already in there. And I did that because I wanted right away my stalks and the shadows related to the stalks to be a different value, a different shade compared to the shadow of the snow. Because the shadow of the snow, like I said, has so much reflected light in it because of its crystalline structure. I wanted that to be a brighter shadow, I guess, and the stalks to be, by contrast, a very dark, dull black color. Something about winter scenes, I suppose it's because all the plants are dead, but it does seem very black and white all the time. Where you see stalks of plants in the summer and the spring, and they all seem to be varying colors. Everything sort of dulls down to black and white, it seems like, in the winter. And now I'm just adding a little definition around each of these flower heads where the snow has accumulated on the back of the flower head and up the stalk. I wanted to make sure that the head of the flower stood out well from the all white of the background. So I made sure to pick those out just a little bit with a gray color. Pretty soon here, see, I started darkening up my sky area that you can see. And I darkened up my sky area a lot, but I faded it down kind of subtly so that it looked like mounds of snow in the background that receded into the darker sky. You'll see as it comes up here. Excuse me, I had to get a drink of water. I'm getting a sore throat. Even looking at all this snow, I think. Getting a sore throat already. Now, if you'll notice that I am making the darkest part of the stalk only on the underside of the snow, and you'll see a little bit more as we continue working, but there's actually a line of snow and ice frozen along the top edge of each stalk, And that was also really interesting to portray, how to do this line of snow along the stalk without it getting lost too much in the white background. You really just gotta, with snow, I feel like you really just have to go slowly and patiently fiddle with how you want it to look. So I'm just doing these little like smiley face marks for my seed heads. I've drawn sunflowers before where I was very careful about portraying a sunflower seed head because it has such a distinctive pattern to it. But this was a much more impressionistic winter scene that I was going for here, so I just had my little smiley face marks that represent the bottom edge of the sunflower seed that sticks out from the head. The pointy bit is what sticks into the actual plant. So I just sort of generally sunflower seeded the area. Now you'll notice this nice dark outline on my bird that I did on purpose. I wanted him also to very much stand out of the snow, but I didn't want to lose all of the nice soft feathery tones he had in his body, so I've only put the very darkest, the very thickest concentration of ink, I suppose, around the very edge and around a little joint where his wing starts so far. And there I am just picking out some edges here on my snow because it was all moundy. This wasn't a smooth field of snow, thankfully, I guess, because I feel like that would be even tougher to draw, because at least this lumpy snow had a bunch of hillocks, little mounds and dips that created some nice shadows for me to work with. And there I am putting some more stalk color in. You see how even though these stalks are going to end up so dark, I started out very light, and that's what you guys have to do too, start out super light. I don't know if you can see from here, but I was actually very careful to make sure that his little beak is open. My little bird, his beak is open because he is mowing down on some sunflower seeds at the moment. This little guy, he was just stuffing his adorable fluffy bird face with seeds. He actually had one in between in his beak. He had one in his beak in one of the pictures that I took of him. It was very cute. And now I'm just putting in these splotches, you see, because one of the things to avoid when you're painting snow like this is uniformity. Don't put all of your shadows in a row or along an edge. You have to break up those darker shadows a little bit so that they look more natural and more like snow. And you'll notice I'm blotting a lot when it comes to the shadows on the snow, and that's because you don't want too solid of a shadow either. If you put down some color and it's a nice solid bit of color while it's still wet, if you gently blot it with your paper towel, then it brings some of the color up in just an irregular enough pattern that it starts to look a little bit more natural, a little bit more like lumpy snow, I suppose. Now I'm just picking out a couple more areas where my snow shadows get to be the very darkest. But you're starting to really see the seed heads popping out now. You're really starting to see some of the depth of my snow. Now I'm putting in just a little bit more little birdie details. He had a little white on his chest that I wanted to make sure that I thought was a really nice contrast to the snow he was standing on. And there's my little sunflower seeds starting to come in there. He was surrounded by a veritable graveyard of sunflower seed shells that he's just been pulling from these sunflower heads and scattering all about, and other birds too. By this point, the ground beneath my sunflowers was liberally scattered with sunflower seeds from all of the little birds coming in. And there were little tiny bird tracks too. Those were super cute. My little tiny little bird tracks in the snow. Shifted my angle a little bit. Now you can see the far side of that painting a little bit, where the sky fades down into my snowdrifts. Not too much yet. The sky's not as dark as it's going to become quite yet. But that's how it goes with this snow. If I had started out with these darker colors right from the beginning, it wouldn't have looked as dimensional. I mean, that's one of the you say build up layers, and people sort of nod at you. Yeah, I have at least 3 layers in this drawing, and it's just not enough. You need a lot of translucent layers, a lot of partially see-through layers, because that's what makes it feel like it has real depth to it, because you can see bits of those previous layers through the layers you put on top of it when you use translucent colors like I'm doing here. This, I mean, as you can tell just watching this drawing has many layers, dozens of layers, just carefully and very patiently thrown on there, and let it dry and add more layers, keep going back in there. There I was trying to get a really nice dark contrast between the one side of the stalk that you could see and the side that was all snowy. There you can see my sunflower seeds a little better. I put in a lot of light colored smiley faced sunflower seeds to, again, also give it a little bit of depth before I went in and added in my very darkest sunflower seed bits there, so that it looked like there's more sunflower seeds receding away from your sight within the flower head. Just little things. Always add just teeny things to make your piece more alive, I suppose, to give it just a little breath of life. Now I'm adding in some darker background grays here, it looks like. I decided partway through here that I wasn't going dramatic enough for some of my background shadows. So I just kept darkening up parts I wanted darker. I wasn't very happy with it in the middle. I'm never happy with things in the middle. That's why you have to keep working on it. What's this little dark bit here? He was standing on this ledge, this strange hummock, I suppose, of snow that I tried to put in there, but all the sunflower seeds sort of busied up that little hill he was standing on a little too much. I was at his tiny foot. I was almost finished with the bird before I realized that I didn't put in any little bird feet. He was just hovering there over the snow. That's why it's good to step away from a drawing every once in a while and then come back to it and look and go, are all the limbs accounted for on my subject matter here? Because that's an important bit. That's an important bit to have in there, those limbs. Here, this looks like I'm finally going in to darken up this background a little bit. I'm just wetting the area, carefully wetting around those sunflower heads, because I want them to stay nice and bright in contrast to this darker background I'm going to be putting in right here. There's a lot of just careful minor additions in something like this. Just carefully going around those sunflower heads. This looks like I'm so much more deft with this brush because it's sped up here a little bit for time, so it makes it look like I'm very deft with my brush work, but I'm actually quite slow. Here's my nice dark color. This is just a mixture of black ink and blue ink, same as all the rest of this, diluted to the approximate tone that I wanted. Here we go. Just pop those little sunflower heads right out of the background. Because in reality, I'm pretty sure this was a much more washed out scene than what it looks like in the painting that I draw. But that's artistic license, I guess. If I want more contrast in my sky to offset my pretty bright white sunflower heads, then that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add in some darks. I must get a hair. I have 3 animals, well 4 animals, but 3 animals that have fur. So I have 3 animals that have fur, and they are always getting their fur all over in my watercolors and my ink drawings. I spend far too much time just trying to carefully pick little bits of cat fur, dog fur off of some of these, especially these wet drawings. I'm going to go just very carefully, making sure I don't get too much dark over that stalk. I wanted my background to definitely lean blue, again just to contrast the black in the flower stalks and the sunflower seed heads. Just very careful, adding in that color. One thing about inks like this that I like a little less than watercolors is that once you that's if I put a splotch of bright blue in there and I leave it for a little while and go do something else, I can't soften those edges up once they've dried. So you really have to work with it quickly as you go and not let any hard edges dry on there. Especially for snow. You don't want too many hard edges in that drawing. Just picking out my sunflower heads here. This was probably one of the most tedious parts of this particular drawing, just because there are so many little peeky, hidey hole background pieces in between the stalks and the heads of the sunflowers. You can see the sky through quite a bit of these teeny tiny little holes in between the stalks. So I ended up going through and just darkening up all those little tiny holes, and it did end up taking a while, but it was worth it in the end because it really sunk the background a little bit more and popped the sunflower heads, which is what I wanted, which is what I was going for. So mission accomplished, I guess. A dark background. Can't seem to, I am definitely getting a sore throat, I think. I can't seem to clear my throat today. Bear with me in my scratchy sore throat today. It's too much snow outside. I used a little bit more black here than I think I initially wanted for some of these background hidey holes. I think I started out with a mixture that leaned too heavily toward just black. But it's alright because it fades alright into the black as you go deeper into the plant here. So I suppose that works out alright. It's so blue over here though. Oh, there we go. Darken that up. Fade that in a little bit better. Just keep tinkering. Never, that should be my motto for art. Never stop tinkering with your drawing until you have to. I mean, eventually you do have to stop tinkering, or else you'd work on one piece just forever, and that's not very efficient. You have to recognize that moment where you need to just stop and step away from the drawing and call it done, even if you aren't completely satisfied with it. Because life moves on, time moves on, and you've got things to do. You can't work on one piece forever, even if it is a fiddly snow piece. Oh, that's a dark shadow. That must have been a mound of snow that turned very sharply away from the light source here. Give me that nice dark shadow. Yeah, there's definitely some more dramatic shadows in this painting than there was in the original photo. See if I can find that original photo. and put it up here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Original photo. It's a pretty washed out scene, but you know, you can do that if you want as an artist. You can make your scene more contrast heavy just to make it a better piece of art. That's one thing I definitely struggled with for a while, is that I tended to try and recreate things too literally, too realistically. I need to work on my artistic flair. That's what this drawing was. I was working on my impressionism, I guess, a little bit, just trying to get the gist of the idea of the feeling of the moment, as opposed to any specific detail. And here's where it gets a little nerve-wracking. What I'm doing right now is I'm adding in just these little squiggly lines to make the bright surfaces of my snow look a little more erratic, like snow naturally does, where it twists and turns away in little bumps and lumps. And this part is relatively nerve-wracking because it's so easy to put in too many little black lines so that it stops looking like snow. It starts looking like something else. I guess something lumpy and black, like coal. Like this was a naughty bird and it got coal for Christmas instead of delicious sunflower seeds. But luckily I don't think I went too far with the black here. It's another something you really want to add, like little tiny bits at a time, just to make sure it's looking right. It's looking how you want it to. And that paper towel is a lifesaver for this application where you don't want your blacks to be too harsh in a lot of the drawing. Because you can just put that black line down and be like, oh, too harsh, and blot it away, and it smudges it really nicely. But here we are, I think, winding toward the end of this drawing. I'm adding in, I think, a final wash of this blue color here. Oh, sorry, don't mind that noise in the background if you can hear it. I'm not sure if you can even hear it. My lovely, wonderful husband just got home from work, and he's got important work conversations going on. I made a sign for my room here. It says shh, don't talk too loud, I'm recording in here. We'll see if he notices my sign. But yeah, here we are, just adding in these darkest shadows, these very darkest spots that I always save for last. Just little nooks and crannies within this lump of frozen sunflower plant where the light is particularly hidden. Filled in a couple more stalks here. A couple of nice faded shadows here in the back. See, this is where I started to run the risk of maybe overworking a little bit. This is where I had to stop myself and tell myself to, relax about the snow a little bit. And here's his little bird feet. I love his little bird feet. Bird feet are so cool. I actually wrote an entire article once on the mechanism of how bird feet work. And they're really fascinating, but I guess you guys probably don't want to hear about the mechanics of bird feet. Let me know if you do. I've still got that article somewhere. I'm fascinated by odd things sometimes, but that's okay, because I always learn something new. I'm always learning something new, and I think that's the important bit. Is to never stop learning stuff. Just filling in some more sunflower seeds here. I gave myself the suggestion of sunflower seeds on the seed heads, but left a lot of space blank until the very end, just because I wanted to. You have to make sure you see that white a little bit between the sunflower heads because it's nice and frozen. You don't want it to look too solid. Now I'm doing some mysterious corner work that was not caught on camera. Now I think I'm about done. I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit. Oh yeah, I've got my my handy dandy hairdryer out. I really like pulling tape off of a painting where there's a dark background. I don't know why, it just always seems more satisfying when there's a solid dark background on a painting and you pull up that tape. The white snow didn't create as much of a solid background, but it was still, I had enough shading in my snow that it was still a nice stark difference between my background and my edge there. Always tape down any drawing you're going to do with a lot of water like this, and then let it dry completely before you take any of that tape off, because that's how you get your paper to dry flat again if you've had some wrinkles in there from all the water. So I always tape down my paintings. There's my little bird guy. Look at him, he's so adorable. Hello, little bird fellow. Just pan out there a little bit. Oh, my fancy panning focusing. But here we got a nice still. I got a still image of this lovely little bird. He turned out cute. Like I've done a lot more detailed birds, a lot more maybe anatomically correct birds, but as far as an exercise in a more impressionistic style goes, I think he turned out really cute. And he looks nice and fluffy like he's supposed to in the cold. Well, anyways, thank you for coming along and watching me paint these frozen sunflower seed heads, I suppose, with my cute little sunflower seed bird. Thank you for stopping by, and have a great rest of your day. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.